Chapter 4, The Penitentiary. There is no air conditioning in C cell house, and until a man sits inside a cell on the top tier during a scorching Kansas summer, he does not really understand sweat. The brown metal fans turning sluggishly outside the cells do not cool the air. They simply move it back and forth as to make certain no corner is untouched by the heat. The design of the cell house contributes to the misery. It is actually two independent structures, one within the other. A great stone building dropped like a cake dish over a rectangular, 5-story tall row of human cages. The cells are stacked in the center of the building like a giant honeycomb, side by side, one row atop the other and back to back, so that each cell facing north has an identical cell behind facing south. There is a 20-foot open space between the cells and the exterior walls. Because of this, you can stand on the bottom floor and look down through the entire length of the shoebox-shaped cell house. You can look up too and see each of the 5 tiers bounded by steel balconies. But if you try to count the cells, you will eventually lose track because the 5.5 by 9-foot cubicles are indistinguishable from one another, and counting them is as difficult as keeping track of boxcars on a mile-long freight train. On most afternoons, the sun filters through the cell house's cathedral-sized windows, casting a grid of shadows on the white tile floor. It is then that the cell house's double-structure design works like a greenhouse, capturing the warmth inside. Some convicts claim that the bottom tier is the coolest when they are locked in their cells at night because it is closest to the ground. But others argue the middle floors are the best because they are nearest the few windows that actually are open. No one disagrees about the 5th tier. It is agony. The air is thick and hot to the tongue. Convicts sit on mattresses at night on the top tier as if in a narcotics stupor, naked except for sweat-soaked boxer shorts. They keep their cells dark, afraid that the heat generated by the single 100-watt bulb above the metal sink will make the cell even more unbearable. Their bodies are covered with a thin layer of sweat that gleams even in the blackness when illuminated by the red glow of a half-spent cigarette. When you walk along the 5th tier, you can smell the sweat and the stale smoke. Sometimes a face will loom forward from a darkened cell, appearing a ghostly white behind the inch-thick steel bars before disappearing moments later into the blackness. Little wonder that years ago, a gang of convicts called the Federal Penitentiary in Leavenworth the Hot House. The 1,200 men imprisoned there are considered to be among the most dangerous criminals in the United States. Years ago, the Bureau of Prisons learned that mixing first-time offenders with hardcore criminals was disastrous, so it created a stepladder system. Non-violent and white-collar felons, as well as inmates in their 20s and 30s serving short prison sentences, are supposed to be sent to level 1 prison camps, where they live in college-style dormitories and attend therapeutic rap sessions and drug treatment classes. Some of these camps don't even have walls or fences, and in recent years, they have been dubbed club feds by the media because the inmates, including the Watergate conspirators in the 1970s and the Wall Street inside traders in the 1980s, often spend their afternoons playing tennis or sunbathing. At the Hot House, level 1 camps are called kiddie joints because they are considered the kindergarten of prisons. On the next rung of the Bureau's ladder are the medium security prisons, officially labeled Level 2, 3, and 4 federal correctional institutions. These prisons are progressively more secure, and most have perimeter fences and guards stationed in gun towers, but the emphasis remains on educational and vocational training. The Hot House is the Harvard of them all. It is the oldest, the most infamous. There is only one federal penitentiary with a higher ranking level than Leavenworth, and that is the much dreaded prison in Marion, Illinois, the Bureau's only level 6 penitentiary. It is considered the end of the line for the worst of the worst convicts, but Marion's reputation as being the nation's most dangerous is deceiving. Marion houses only 400 inmates, and since 1983, when 2 guards were murdered there, the inmates have been locked in one-man cells for 23 hours of each day. Whenever an inmate at Marion is taken from his cell, his hands are cuffed, his legs are chained, and he is surrounded by 3 guards, each armed with a nightstick. The federal penitentiary at Leavenworth holds 3 times as many inmates as Marion, and they roam the compound relatively unchecked during the day. Hothouse guards are not permitted to carry nightsticks or any weapons without special authorization. On any given day, Leavenworth holds a minimum of 200 men whose records are filled with just as much violence as anyone in Marion. In fact, these men would have been sent to Marion if there would have been room for them. So while Marion reigns as the Bureau's toughest prison, it is, in many ways, a safer place for both guards and inmates than is the hothouse. According to the Bureau's statistics, the average Leavenworth convict is a 39-and-a-half-year-old bank robber serving a 35-year prison sentence, but statistics cannot convey the horror of these men's past. Most have spent more than half of their lives in institutions, beginning with reform schools, graduating later to county jails and state prisons. Some, like William Post, started on the treadmill as young as 8 years old. They often come from abusive, alcoholic, and violent homes. Many are drug addicts. Through the years, some have been raped in prison, others beaten. A few have been taught job skills, earned high school diplomas, even college degrees. Nearly all have been psychologically analyzed up and down, over and under, and have participated in some revolutionary new program that the public was assured would rehabilitate them. Yet, regardless of whether the latest fad in corrections was mind-altering drugs or group therapy sessions, virtually all the convicts at the hothouse have proved to be resolute, intractable, irredeemable outlaws. Crime is their chosen occupation, violence their tool of choice. A popular saying within the Bureau of Prison goes like this: no criminal is sent directly to Leavenworth. He must earn his way there. How does a criminal achieve that? He fucks up everywhere else. Leavenworth is an enormous warehouse of the most loathsome, a prison where society isolates men from whom it no longer has any hope, only fear. The Bureau requires each penitentiary to keep a posted picture file of prisoners within its walls who are classified as life-threatening or extreme escape risk. The red-covered log at Leavenworth has 200 entries, more than any other level 5 penitentiary. These are typical. This inmate was a member of the Westies, violent criminals who controlled, exploited, and terrorized the west side of Manhattan for 20 years through extortion, murder, drug dealing, auto theft, burglary, blackmail, and a variety of other criminal enterprises. The gang caused 8 murders, including the dismemberment of at least 3 bodies. This inmate was a member of a South Carolina drug and prostitution ring involved in 22 murders and the kidnapping of young girls who were later forced into white slavery. This inmate assassinated 3 CBS employees in 1982, stole $5 million in jewelry from a New York store, and is worth an estimated $17 million, making him a prime escape risk. This inmate took a mother and 14-month-old baby hostage during a bank robbery. When the mother broke loose and escaped, he stabbed the baby to death. This inmate operated a major Colombian drug trafficking ring and is known to have plotted a prison escape by means of an assault with a rocket-firing helicopters and paramilitary mercenaries. Leavenworth was the first prison ever built. Always before, Congress had paid state prisons and county jails a fee in returning for housing. Always before, Congress had paid state prisons and county jails a fee in return for housing criminals convicted of federal crimes such as bank robbery, kidnapping, and counterfeiting. But after the Civil War, most of these prisons became badly overcrowded and states started to turn away from federal prisons. Congress responded in 1891 by ordering the construction of 2 federal penitentiaries and the acquisition of a 3rd. Actual construction at Leavenworth began in 1898, and from all accounts, conditions were cruel. Convict laborers marched daily from the Army stockade at nearby Fort Leavenworth, worked 12 straight hours with only a short break for lunch. Rations were meager, and there were complaints that the food was little better than garbage. Discipline was crushing. Anyone disobeying an order was forced to carry the baby, a form of punishment in which prisoners were chained for months to a 25-pound ball which they had to lift in order to walk. Even the guards were affected by the harsh conditions. According to local newspaper accounts, many quit, saying only, "The wall got me," a reference to the great stone wall being built around the penitentiary compound. On February 1st, 1906, Leavenworth received his first inmate, John Grindstone, a Native American convicted of murder. He was paroled a few years later, but returned to the hothouse within months for killing another man. He eventually died of tuberculosis at the prison and achieved another first by being buried in the first plot of a new pauper cemetery on the hill, a half-mile from the penitentiary. Officially called Mount Hope, the prison cemetery is still used today, although it is better known as Peckerwood Hill, the tag given by the convicts and guards. By the early 1900s, the government had outgrown Leavenworth and its sister institution in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as a former territorial jail in McNeil Island, Washington. It built 4 more federal prisons. All were supposed to be overseen by the Justice Department, but each operated independently. In 1930, Congress created the Federal Bureau of Prisons to make them conform to uniform standards. From the start,